Today we're going to talk about Chapter 7. Chapter 7 has to do with different pathways of energy, metabolism, slow twitching and fast twitching muscles, aerobic respiration, and anaerobic respiration. We're going to be discussing mitochondria a lot, and we've discussed mitochondria before, and it's how you get energy made in the cells in your body so that overall you can have energy. And there's more than 40 different disorders that are related to mitochondria that are defective. And below is what a mitochondria would look like with a cross-section view of it. And we'll be talking about mitochondria several places there in the PowerPoint. So whenever you have respiration, you have aerobic respiration and anaerobic respiration. So aerobic respiration is going to utilize oxygen and anaerobic respiration will not. Whenever you have aerobic respiration, that's down the left on this page, it uses oxygen. Most eukaryotic organisms are going to use aerobic respiration, and it's going to begin with glycolysis, and it's going to convert 1 molecule of glucose into 2 molecules of pyruvate. And we'll talk about that more in this PowerPoint and in class to make this all make sense. Anaerobic respiration occurs without oxygen, so it does not require oxygen. It's used by lots of prokaryotes, which would be bacteria, and used by some protists, and it's used in an anaerobic environment. So syphilis is an example of an anaerobic bacteria because it is killed by oxygen. So when you think about respiration, you're always thinking that things need oxygen because that's what we need, but that's just not the case. Aerobic respiration is the use of oxygen. It's going to be respiration by the usage of oxygen. It's completed in the mitochondria, and it's going to be very efficient. So it's going to yield 36 ATP or adenosine triphosphate per glucose molecule. So per glucose molecule, you're going to get 36 ATPs, which is much more efficient than anaerobic respiration or fermentation. So there's 3 stages to aerobic respiration, and this is going to seem very confusing. But there's 3 stages. The first stage is glycolysis, and it is going to have conversion from glucose to pyruvate. That's going to be the goal of glycolysis. Then you have acetyl coenzyme A formation and the Krebs cycle, which is considered to be the second stage of aerobic respiration, which has those 2 stages within that second stage. And that is going to break down glucose to glycolysis. And then the third stage is electron transfer phosphorylation, or ATP formation. And that sounds confusing, but electron transfer phosphorylation has to do with adding and taking away of phosphorus and that electron transfer chain that we talked about before, where you have little small energy increments that go up like a stair step. Aerobic respiration utilizes oxygen, as we've already talked about. It's going to yield the most ATP from each glucose molecule, which would be 36, so it's the most efficient. Eukaryotes undergo aerobic respiration, and it's completed inside the mitochondria. So glycolysis is the first stage of aerobic respiration. It's going to start and end in cytoplasm. It's going to happen in all prokaryotes and eukaryotic cells. It's going to be an energy investment of ATP, which starts glycolysis. You're going to have 2 ATP, and they're going to be used to split glucose. You're going to form what's called 2 pGALs. That is a big long word. We're not going to worry about what pGAL stands for. Each pGAL is going to have 1 phosphate. Enzymes are going to convert 2 pGALs to pGA, and then they're going to form 2 NADHs. This is just the intermediate steps that happen during glycolysis. Then you're going to have 4 ATP that are formed by substrate level phosphorylation, and you're going to get a net ATP of 2 at the end. The second stage of aerobic respiration is going to be acetyl coenzyme A formation and Krebs, which is going to be the second stage, but it has 2 components within it. So it's going to finish breaking down glucose that began in glycolysis. It's going to occur in mitochondria. Each stage occurs twice in the breakdown of 1 glucose molecule, and acetyl coenzyme A happens in the inner compartment of the mitochondria. Where this happens in the mitochondria, you're going to have enzymes, which we've talked about before, so think Pac-Man, that's going to split pyruvate, and it's going to form acetyl coenzyme A and carbon dioxide, which is going to diffuse out of the cell. And then you're also going to have NADH formed. Krebs cycle is the second stage of aerobic respiration, and it's a sequence of enzyme-mediated reactions, which we've discussed before, that break down 1 acetyl and coenzyme A into 2 carbon dioxides. Oxaloacetate is used and regenerated. You end up with 3 NADHs and 1 FADH2, which are formed, and 1 ATP, which is formed. Electron transfer phosphorylation happens in the mitochondria, which is that thing that looks like it's got a ribbon inside of it, inside the cell, which creates energy inside your body. So it's going to result in an attachment of phosphate to ADP. So you're taking ADP, which is a diphosphate, and forming ATP, which is triphosphate, just by adding that phosphorus. So you had some coenzymes that you produced in the last step of aerobic respiration on the last slide. So you have NADH and FADH2, which you had produced in acetyl coenzyme A in Krebs cycle. And you're going to donate electrons and hydrogen ions to the electron transfer chain. So you're also, beyond that, going to have active transport from hydrogen concentration gradients in the outer mitochondrial compartment. So what does all that mean? It means that in the last step, you produced NADH and FADH2. And then in this step, you're going to use what you produced in the last step. And you're going to use that to bind some phosphorus to the ADP to produce ATP, because ATP is the form of energy you need in your body. Then you're going to have these hydrogen concentration gradients that are important to be able to make all of this happen inside the mitochondria. The hydrogen that gets produced is going to follow its gradient through ATP synthase, which attaches to phosphorus. So in order for ADP to form ATP, you need some hydrogen concentration gradients and you need some phosphorus to add on to it. Then you're going to have oxygen, which accepts some electrons. So you're going to have an oxygen molecule that accepts some electrons. It's going to combine to hydrogen, and if you got hydrogen and oxygen, you got water. So what's going to happen at the end? So this is the very end of aerobic respiration. You're going to have the breakdown of one glucose molecule inside your body at the end of aerobic respiration that is going to yield 36 ATP for you inside your body. So you're going to have that happen from all those steps that we've discussed. And electron transfer phosphorylation is the last step. So aerobic respiration is much more efficient than any other type of respiration. Final stages of aerobic respiration is going to result in the breakdown of pyruvate to carbon dioxide. So most coenzymes that become reduced deliver electrons and hydrogen ions to the electron transfer chain. So what does that mean? It means in all those reactions, there's an electron transfer chain, like we've talked about before. And they're going to be delivering electrons and hydrogen ions to help make all of this happen. And then the energy gets released by the electrons flowing through the electron transfer chain, and it's captured by ATP. Oxygen accepts electrons at the end of the chains. Fermentation starts with glycolysis, and you have two types of fermentation. You have alcoholic fermentation and lactate fermentation. In alcoholic fermentation, pyruvate is split. Pyruvate splits into carbon dioxide and acetaldehyde. Acetaldehyde receives electrons and hydrogen from NADH, forming NAD and ethanol. Lactate fermentation, pyruvate receives electrons and hydrogen from NADH, forming NAD and lactate. The net yield of ATP is small in fermentation, especially compared to aerobic respiration. Lactate fermentation is why when you exercise and you get sore, it's because you have lactic acid buildup in your muscles, and you have to try to get that lactic acid out of your body, and too much lactic acid buildup in your body can be really bad. So alcoholic fermentation and lactate fermentation both are involved with pyruvate, NADH, NADs, and it is going to yield ATP, but in smaller amounts. Carbohydrate breakdown. You eat carbs all the time, bread, pasta, all kinds of foods, potatoes. So the conversion of chemical energy of glucose and other organic compounds to the chemical energy of ATP. Well, what does that mean? It means you're taking in glucose molecules in the food you eat all the time, and your body converts that into ATP through aerobic respiration. That happens in your mitochondria. So in order to get that glucose you ingest into a usable form, your body has to convert it with your mitochondria and a bunch of steps we've already talked about. During carbohydrate breakdown, you're going to regenerate that NAD that you need for some of those steps we've already discussed. Anaerobic respiration does not utilize oxygen. In fact, organisms that utilize anaerobic respiration are killed by oxygen. So syphilis cannot be contracted via a toilet seat because it is killed by oxygen. Therefore, it's an anaerobic respiration type of bacteria. Fermentation, alcoholic and lactate. We've already discussed it a little bit, but fermentation are metabolic pathways that occur in the absence of oxygen. They're used by prokaryotes, which are like bacteria. They're used by protists. It's completed in the cytoplasm, and it's going to yield 2 ATP per glucose molecule. So that is a lot less than the 36 that has been produced whenever you have like aerobic respiration. The first step in fermentation is glycolysis, which we've discussed. You're going to get the formation of 2-pyruvate. You're going to get 2 NADHs and 2 ATPs. And pyruvate is going to be converted to other molecules, but is not fully broken down to carbon dioxide and water. So what you're going to result with in fermentation is you're going to get 2 ATPs at the end for energy usage. You're going to get 2 NADHs and 2 pyruvates. But then that pyruvate that's formed is going to get converted, some of it, but all of it's not going to be completely broken down. And this is going to provide energy. This type of pathway, fermentation through alcoholic and lactate, is going to provide energy for those prokaryotes or protists. And so it has to provide energy for a smaller organism because it's only producing those 2 ATPs, other than the 36 that we have. The twitching muscle fibers. So you have slow twitch muscles versus fast twitch muscles. And slow twitch muscles are referred to as red muscles. And they make energy or ATP by aerobic respiration. And they have lots of mitochondria. And these are the type of muscles that would dominate in prolonged activity. So if you're a marathon runner, that's a prolonged activity. So a lot of slow twitch muscle action there. If you have fast twitch is referred to as white muscle fibers. They make ATP by lactate fermentation. They have fewer mitochondria and no myoglobin. And they sustain short bursts of activity, like what would be used if you were a sprinter. And my sister-in-law always wants me to run these long races. And I always tell her that in high school, I was a sprinter and did the 100, the 200, and the 4x100 relay. So I always pick and tell her I have more fast twitch muscles. She has more slow twitch muscles. So there are different types of muscles that they refer to. Energy in the body. There's energy pathways that we've been discussing that keep you alive. And you have to have the entrance of glucose. So you have to eat that glucose and other organic compounds to get it into your body. And that's really important. And then whatever you're eating, carbohydrates versus fats versus protein in your diet, will alter that energy releasing pathway. You're going to get different amounts of energy from things you eat. So if you eat a Snickers bar, that might elevate your energy, but then your energy level is going to go down much quicker than if you were to eat something else that was more energy efficient for your body. So when glucose rises in your body, the pancreas is going to increase insulin secretion. And the cells are going to take up glucose faster, and there's going to be more ATP formed, and glycogen and its fatty acid production is going to increase. But then when your blood glucose falls, if it falls lower, the pancreas is going to increase glucagon secretion. And stored glycogen is converted to glucose. So basically, anytime that your blood sugar drops or it gets too high, your body's going to try to maintain that. And if your body can't maintain that, like if your blood sugar gets too high and your body can't bring it back down with insulin, then you would have to go on some type of medication or some type of shot, or you would have to do something else to be able to control your blood sugar. Because if it gets way too high, then you can lose your vision for a while. Long-term diabetic problems can cause glaucoma, loss of eyesight, loss of limbs. So it is very important to control your blood sugar. And on the flip side of that, if blood sugar gets too low, like if you're hypoglycemic, like I am, then if your blood sugar gets too low, you can pass out, you get sweaty, you get to feeling like you're just going to fall over, and you feel shaky. So conversion of all of those things to control your blood glucose level is very important. And of course, there's molecules other than glucose that also offer energy inside your body. It's not just glucose that offer energy in your body, but you do have to have glucose. And of course, there's different pathways that convert lipids and proteins to substances that may enter your glycolysis or Krebs cycle. So there's all these different pathways that we've discussed. Energy from protein versus fat. So enzymes split, and we've talked about enzymes before, like the Pac-Man pizza scenario. Enzymes split dietary proteins into amino acids. So you know that amino acids build proteins, and if you have a protein, your body is going to break it up into those amino acids so it can use it. So enzymes split dietary proteins into amino acid subunits, which enter your bloodstream, and then your body uses them. So it's used to build proteins over time, and you're breaking it up to supply your body with all the needs that it has for metabolism. So excess amino acids in your body are going to be broken down into ammonia and various products that are going to enter that Krebs cycle that you need for aerobic respiration to be able to take place. So that's what your body is going to do with any excess amino acids that you have. And compared to carbohydrate, fatty acid breakdown yields more ATP per carbon atom. So you're going to get more energy over a longer period of time if you don't eat those carbs that give you like high energy and then you crash. You're going to be better off to eat good carbs. Enzymes cleave fats. So an enzyme is going to cleave a fat, so it's going to break it up into glycerol and fatty acids, which are mostly triglycerides. So enzymes inside your body, when you eat fats, they're going to break those fats down into the fatty components. Glycerol products are going to enter glycolysis. So the glycerol that gets broken down when you eat fats are going to enter that glycolysis step that we've already discussed. And then the fatty acids are going to enter the Krebs cycle. So it is very important for these reasons for your body to get fat and protein and carbohydrates to sustain life. You need all of those. And it would be very bad if you were to eliminate any of those out of your diet, which would be very difficult to do, but it would be very difficult to sustain life and feel good if you were not getting a main component of your diet. So energy. All that we've been talking about in this chapter is energy and metabolism and energy pathways and glucose. So energy inputs are going to drive molecules in cells. And it begins with the sun. So energy from the sun is going to sustain life because without the sun, you have no plants. Without the plants, you have no animals that can eat on the plants. So energy from the sun starts and sustains life. And so you have those photosynthesizers that use that energy from the sun to sustain their life. And then you have aerobic respiration, which balances photosynthesis. And you have the other organisms that rely on that photosynthesis as well.